Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Irais, and I will be your moderator for today's event. So I see several of you all joining us already. Hello, Christopher. Hello, Rob, Alexandra. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you're all doing amazing. So before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and give everybody else a few minutes to join us today. But while we wait, let us know where you're joining us from. You should find your chat box to the right corner of your screen, so let us know where you're joining us from. And also, by the way, it's not too late to invite any colleagues that you would like to invite to this webinar. You can also find the join link in the chat box as well. So go ahead and send those out if you need to. All right. And also something to keep in mind, we recommend you close out any other windows in your computer. That way you experience a better webinar experience and your computer won't crash or slow down or anything along those lines. So just something to keep in mind there. All right. And also feel free to continue engaging on the chat box throughout the presentation. We will be engaging with you all through there. If you have any comments, anything along those lines, just make use of that chat box right there. And we also want to invite you to continue the conversation with us on social media. So we want to continue to provide any valuable BPO insights and resources to equip you with so you can embark on an efficient and successful BPO journey. So you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, as you can see on your screen. So go ahead and give us a follow and stay in touch. If you have any topic suggestions, any ideas, any comments, you can shoot us a message there, or also just FYI, there will be a survey that will be prompted to you after today's presentation. If you could spare some minutes to let us know your thoughts and feedback, we would really appreciate it. Your thoughts are very important to us, so we would love to hear them. All right, so now that it seems everybody had a chance to join us, let me just cover some basic housekeeping. So if you take a look at the right-hand corner of your screen, you'll find a gray sidebar that looks a little bit like this on the screen. Here you can find the chat box. Again, make sure to leverage that throughout the presentation. Leave us your comments, any thoughts. Also, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat box as well. Just keep in mind that Nina will be answering those until the very end, so make sure to stick around to get those extra BPO insights that Nina will be sharing with you. And also, please know that there's also a raised hand in the sidebar that you can leverage. Just something to keep in mind. Nina will be letting you know whenever you can go ahead and use that. And then also we have several polls throughout this webinar. So please engage in those. Let us know your thoughts whenever they come up. And then finally, do know that this presentation is being recorded as we speak, so you don't have to worry about taking notes or anything along those lines. You can just focus on soaking up all the fantastic BPO insights that Nina will be sharing with you today. All right, so now that the housekeeping is out of the way, let me just go over our agenda for today so you know what to expect. So the first thing that Nina will be covering with you is why business process outsourcing is important, especially today with our current situation. She will cover some key trends in the industry. She will tackle some common myths that you might be familiar with that you need to break away from, and then cover some benefits that your organization can expect when outsourcing. And then we'll leave you with some action steps, just a roadmap to embark on your outsourcing journey. And then again, at the very end, we'll be answering all the questions, so make sure to stick around till the end for that. All right, so without further ado, please allow me to introduce Nina Brown. She's DATAMARK's Vice President of Client Solutions. She will be addressing why your organization should partner up with an experienced and knowledgeable BPO provider. That way you can stay open for business during uncertain times, grow brand loyalty, maintain stellar customer service, and survive times of crisis. So welcome, Nina. Take it away.
Thanks very much, Irais. Yes, a very warm welcome to everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you all and have you join us for this webinar. Here at DATAMARK, we understand how stressful the uncertainty of 2020 has been. It's basically rocked the business world like never before. Therefore, we're compelled to step up and help businesses that are not familiar with how business process outsourcing can make business more efficient so that they can perhaps be better positioned to stay open amid crises like the pandemic and other things that might come along. So before we move forward, though, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Nina Brown. I am Vice President of Client Solutions at DATAMARK. I have spent over 20 years in the business process outsourcing arena, serving in many different capacities. Originally, I was a software engineer, developing systems to service business process functions for other large companies. I later served in a project management and program management capacity, working to transition processing functions that would solve business problems for our clients. And then later in an operational capacity, working to ensure that service levels would be met and exceeded for all servicing functions. In most recent years, I moved into my role as indicated by my title of Client Solutions, where I work to bring comprehensive solutions to our partners that will bring them functional and financial benefits while offering added efficiency and exceptional service for their customers. So now let me tell you a little bit about DATAMARK and what we do best. We are a business process outsourcing company, and we have been helping Fortune 500 companies and other large enterprises up-level their business processes, boost their efficiency, dominate customer satisfaction, and turn greater profits for over 30 years. Our company was founded in 1989, and we opened operations out of El Paso, Texas in 1990. So I'm excited to say that we are celebrating 30 years of service this year. After 30 years, we are now a global company with operational facilities nearshore in Mexico, farshore in India, and of course, several facilities across the United States. So now that you know a little bit more about us, we would love to learn a little bit more about you. Let us know, please, in the chat box what you and your organization do best and why you want to start leveraging business process outsourcing for your business. We would love to hear your thoughts on that. All right, a few different things coming in the chat box. Awesome. So looks like we have some different industries represented, and that's great to see. So now that we broke the ice, let's go ahead and get down to the business of the hour. I want to make sure we have enough time to cover all the essential business process outsourcing insights in store for today. So please do stick around to the end, because that is where we will give you a roadmap of what you can follow as you maybe are starting an outsourcing journey. So why business process outsourcing? Why is this such an essential component for so many businesses? They want to survive any crisis. They want to be able to scale. They want to be able to grow brand loyalty and maintain stellar customer service in the process. So how can business process outsourcing help with that? Well, there are a lot of varied thoughts and perceptions and even misnomers out there around the idea of outsourcing. Sometimes it's considered a solid strategy to embrace, and sometimes it's even somewhat of a hush-hush topic that people fear exploring. So in case you are like little Sally here that may not have a clear understanding of exactly what outsourcing is or why outsourcing, we will cover exactly what outsourcing is, but also exactly what it isn't. Get to the next slide here. So first and foremost, business process outsourcing, or BPO, as we will call it going forward, allows an organization to focus on what it does best, while other companies take care of the little things. Now, those little things are different for every single company. It all depends on what your company does and what your core competencies are. But whatever they are, if you leverage outsourcing for those other things that aren't your core, then you can become more focused on the processes that are your core. So also with other companies taking care of some of your processes, you get a leg up in any crisis from a business continuity perspective because you have another company helping you to face that crisis with you. So we'll start with what is outsourcing not. So it's not an activity where the best price wins. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here as we move forward, but it's not necessarily just a numbers game. It's not a quick fix to an individual problem. You'll see one of the important things about outsourcing is the long term. We're solving long-term problems, not just a really quick fix. It's not just a self-managed add-on to the current business. It's more than that, and you'll see that as we continue our talking here. And it's also not a low-quality staff augmentation. So it's more than just let's get some quick people in here really fast to do some more work. It's much deeper than that. And certainly it's not just a one-time activity that can be just left alone and expected to just kind of run itself. So those are some of the things that it is not, but to talk about what it is, well, it is an opportunity for a lot of different things. So first of all, it's an opportunity to leverage best-in-class industry practices that have been perfected by the companies that provide them. So that can happen if we are willing to accept and embrace what is or is not a core competency for our business. Also, it's an opportunity to institute more rigorous controls around the process. Of course, that takes a give and take. So that's if we're willing to spend the time to build the required governance and the management structure around an outsourcing relationship. It's also an opportunity to forge a long-term partnership with one or more service providers if we treat our contract negotiations as a partnership. So at DATAMARK, we are still partnered, for example, with the very first customer that we partnered with back in 1990. Back then, we provided one singular process for them with just a few people. And now that partnership has grown such that we cover a multitude of varied processes across document processing, call center, and even finance and accounting, with hundreds of people spread across multiple countries globally. So another opportunity that outsourcing brings is the opportunity to operate and serve customers for extended operating hours. So speaking of that global processing, if we consider offshoring, then we have a whole new time frame that we can work within because, well, in the US, when it is midnight, on the opposite side of the world, it's the middle of the day. So our nighttime here is their daytime and vice versa. So there's maybe now some less expensive operating time frames if we're willing to consider the entire globe. So the next opportunity is an opportunity to free up internal resources for other purposes. A lot of times people will look at outsourcing as mass layoffs, but if we plan holistically from the beginning and with a strategic view in mind, really it's an opportunity to reprovision who we have onto our core competencies. Every company still has to cover the back office tasks, the day-to-day basic things that aren't necessarily who we are as a company and what we do as a company. And that's where BPO may be your opportunity to gain back some of that time that your employees are currently spending on all those little things and move them over to some really big core competency type functions. We also have an opportunity to leverage economies of scale if we are willing to accept standardized services. A lot of times, a business process outsourcing partner will have some very standard functions that they have perfected over time. And if we're willing to leverage those standardized services, then we can leverage their economies of scale as well and get some cost savings because of that. So in a nutshell, BPO is essentially the activity of contracting out business tasks to third-party service providers who are highly qualified and skilled in tasks that are not an organization's core competencies. So, what are some of the most common processes that are ripe for outsourcing? Well, these include processes that are highly repetitive, things that you can teach people to just repeat the process over and over again. Back office tasks, often data entry, document processing, those types of things are really good processes, really good targets for outsourcing. Tasks that require specialized knowledge. Me as a company, if I have something to do that I need somebody very specialized, but I don't necessarily have the budget or the resources, the time to invest in how do I specialize in that space, well, I can maybe reach out to an outsourcing partner who does specialize in that space and leverage their capability. Also, tasks that require an improvement in turnaround time, because I can leverage more options, more locations, more people, more systems, then that gives me a potential to speed up my end-to-end processes. So picking the right business processes and successfully outsourcing them to different locations worldwide also allows an organization to experience a smoother transition through any crisis and provides remote options to continue operations if a process does arise. So if you wouldn't mind, please use the raise hand feature that's located on that gray sidebar, to likely on the right-hand side of your screen, to raise your hand if this is the first time you are learning about the powerful benefits of business process outsourcing. And don't be shy. It's better late than never. And really, it's never too late to get started, not even amid a pandemic. So taking a look at those hands raised, we have a few new people. Looks like some people are maybe already into the process. So great to see that variety. Now, let's talk about why businesses are choosing BPO now more than ever, and why companies perhaps really should consider it. So, even though companies have leveraged business process outsourcing for decades as a means to build more robust and more efficient and more profitable companies, it quickly became one of the hottest terms as the coronavirus pandemic set in. So moving forward, as organizations continue to pivot and rethink how they've been operating, its prevalence will continue to grow. So let's discuss some of the reasons why you may also want to consider it for your company. So first off, existing business continuity plans for most companies were not enough during the pandemic. Having a solid business continuity plan ensures your business is prepared for anything. It means that whether there's an earthquake, a fire, a flood, or even civil unrest in the area of your physical location, your business operations will continue uninhibited or can be brought back online quickly. As I recently covered in our previous business continuity webinar, just 10% of businesses without a business continuity plan will survive. Yet, very few companies had plans going into the coronavirus pandemic. Even those that did address specific workflow components impacted by the virus, they didn't necessarily catch them all, or they hadn't necessarily adequately tested their plans to ensure the continuity in advance. So I think it was a bit of a fun time for a lot of companies out there. But with this in mind, organizations are now acutely aware of the fact that they need better continuity planning. Still, they don't necessarily know how to get those processes in place or don't have the bandwidth to begin implementation. They're looking to business process outsourcing companies as a result to bridge that gap so future unplanned events won't impact their operations. So, secondly, the coronavirus showed the world that physical proximity isn't necessarily essential. Customers, even the most resistant to adapting to technology, have learned to leverage tech in customer service situations and now often prefer it to other methods. The same phenomenon is being seen with how businesses work also. Even those that were once resistant to leveraging remote teams were forced to adapt for some time in a lot of cases. And because of this, they've come to realize that they can maintain service levels and maintain their business brand reputation regardless of where their team works, provided they have the tools and the resources in place to support the model. So, despite the significant trend toward cloud-based solutions and newer technology in general, many organizations have held on to their legacy software, building multiple workarounds or requiring teams to leverage several systems to complete a simple task. I'm guessing if I said, raise your hand now if your company has fallen victim to that situation, I would guess most companies have. While the companies may have known that shifting would make processes more efficient and often build continuity into their processes organically, updating systems is often seen as more of a nice to have, but not exactly necessary. So it was something that they put on their wish list for when they had more time or could focus more energy or more resources into an overhaul. Well, unfortunately, the older tech crippled some organizations when quarantines took hold and continued as social distancing became part of the business vernacular. So, the value of business process analysis and re-engineering of processes that an outsourcing company often helps with is now widely understood. To fill this need, companies who are not necessarily experts can turn to those business process outsourcing firms that specialize in that type of improvement to identify the best ways to move forward in that area. Many organizations have held on to the outdated notion that the only way they could keep their data secure was by keeping it in-house. Although countless headline-making data breaches and mishaps should have already proven otherwise, that in-house doesn't always mean more secure. What caught organizations most off guard about the coronavirus in this respect was that they suddenly had to adapt to cloud environments and they had to work remotely, and they didn't necessarily have the security measures already in place to make that happen. Although transitions haven't necessarily been smooth, businesses have had to adapt and create digital security protocols. Now that those are in place, they're more open to the idea of leveraging more tools, processes, and technology. Things like PCI certification and HIPAA compliance are things that BPO companies are not only able to help other companies apply in multiple layers for security purposes, but they can also deliver powerful transformative tech to companies that need it in order to thrive. So our next point is about automation, which is central to lean operations in this day and age. But so let me ask a question to all of you. How much do you think that businesses that automate could save on labor? And so you can use your poll function to mark in if you think that is 10%, 20%, 35%, or 50%. All right. So it looks like most people guessed that it is 20%, and that is correct. We have 20% is on average what somebody can save when automating labor. So great guess from the folks out there. So in talking about automation, often through a BPO company can help with that automation because they have expertise in this area. Not only that, but they can also benefit, companies can benefit from the faster service, the increased flexibility, and potentially improved service that can come with that automation. So BPOs tend to have better insights on, because they've done this before, they've used automation in a lot of different places, they can offer insight into how that can help different companies. So, yet isn't it crazy that many companies have continued handling processes manually? Thinking of business process automation the same way that they thought about updating their legacy software, maybe something nice to do sometime in the future. The problem is the coronavirus resulted in massive shutdowns and stalled the economy. Organizations that couldn't run lean fell behind or even had to shut down. Moving towards the future, organizations need to leverage automation and artificial intelligence, AI, to the fullest extent possible. And so for that, they're often turning to the business process outsourcing companies now for the expert advice and implementation. So let's look at some key trends in the BPO industry now that we have established what outsourcing is, why it is particularly helpful in times of uncertainty, and why you may need it now more than ever. So first trend, and we've kind of mentioned it through here, but definitely a big one that can't be ignored. COVID-19 redefined the customer experience. Bear with me on this one because we've got a lot of data we're about to throw at you here, but it's essential for your business moving forward to be aware of these situations. So when the pandemic began, people huddled into their homes eagerly awaiting the return of normalcy. At first, it seemed it might only be a month or so before routines could resume. Well, a month eventually became several months and through the summer and into the winter. And so we now know that COVID-19, it reshapes the world in profound ways. A shift that not only influenced how people feel, think, behave, and interact today, but will likely linger for any foreseeable future. So it's only natural that something felt so deeply across the globe has redefined the customer experience too. Initially, in less than desirable ways, such as hold times that stretched several hours when people would call a customer service call center, or online queues that were stacked to the hundreds, and contact centers that might have been fully taken offline. However, as companies prepared for the road ahead, they started making decisions with intent and adapting to the COVID transformed world. So there's 5 key ways that COVID really redefined that. So the first is authentic concern is the cornerstone. We've already seen the shift in gestures that companies use to show customers that they care. There's, beverage company, they used $500,000 in sports marketing budget to bolster the Red Cross. National storage chain that gave displaced students 30 days free rent. Countless credit card companies that paused payments and interest. And of course, dozens of auto insurers that mailed out refunds and scaled back premium payments. These large gestures aren't the only ones that people notice, though. Mainly as emotions run high, customers are hyper vigilant about how they're treated as individuals. Companies that respond with genuine concern create a strong immediate reaction and cultivate lasting bonds with those that they serve. Secondly, since the pandemic began, nearly 1/3 of consumers started to review their monthly bills and expenses with the intent to reduce them. So let me ask you a question. How much do you think that spending decreased in most discretionary categories compared to pre-COVID rates? Was it 10 to 15%, 15 to 20%, 20 to 40%, or 40 to 50%? And those numbers are locking in. So let's take a look at what everybody voted. It looks like the guess was exactly on par. So 20 to 40%. Y'all are good. So the correct answer is the 20-40%. And with this in mind, leading companies are using every opportunity possible to create a positive experience and demonstrate the value that they bring. So here's another question for you. What percent of customers do you think will decide to stay with a company after a value-enhancing service interaction? So our poll options are 35%, 50%, 62%, or 82%. How many people will stay with a company after that value-enhancing experience? Right, with the numbers rolling in, I know I definitely would stay with a company just who's taking the time to add value for me. Let's see what our votes are. Looks like most voted for 62% of people staying for a value-enhancing service interaction. Well, that makes sense, right? But even better, it's actually 82%, according to the Gartner survey on this same question. 82% of people will stay just because they had that value-enhancing interaction. So definitely a sound strategy to create such positive experiences and bring value to your customers. All right, one more quick guess as to what percentage of customer interactions actually do add value in the interaction. Do you think that it's 5%, 15%, 20%, or 30%? I'm trying to think back to all the recent times I've been on the phone with somebody or on a chat box. All right, let's see what you all think. Looks like most people, most people think that 30%, well, that's great that the people on this joining today have 30% have the value enhancing interactions. Actually, according to the Gartner analysts, only 15% are actually having a value enhancement in their interaction. So imagine if we could improve that, though, to the 30%, 35%, 50%. Why not even more? How much better would that be to our customers if we could add that value? So what kinds of things could we do? We could validate decisions that are made during the interaction, anticipate the customer's needs and help them with that. help them to achieve the specific goal that they're looking to achieve in an interaction. Maybe educate the customers better for the better or best use of a product. Maybe advise customers on newly introduced products or their features. All things that we could do to not just service the initial contact, the initial interaction, but add some more value, all in the way of being able to retain that 82% that'll stay if we add that value. All right. Another way that COVID-19 really redefined the customer experience, well, this one's almost a gimme. So if you're listening to this webinar right now, you're already riding the wave of digital, right? So before COVID-19, PwC research indicated that nearly 60% of customers felt companies had lost touch with the human element. In all, 75% of global consumers said they want to interact more with a real person as technology improves. That number skyrocketed to 82% in the US. Today, however, customers have little choice but to conform and adopt technology in some cases. So, one more question for you. What percentage of consumers do you think are now more comfortable having a conversation with an AI powered system, as well as what percentage do you think actually prefers artificial intelligence over human representation when it's faster? So do you think that is 10 to 30%, 21 and 45%, 32% and 50%, or 45% and 60%? Right, lock in those votes. I know what I thought before I started this. I was not correct about these, but I have the answer. I will share with you as soon as we see your votes. All right, so the majority of people, it looks like, have guessed. Oh, there's a mix here. We've got some guessing, the majority guessing 21% and 45%, but also even lower than that on the 10 and 30%. So the 21 and 45, if you voted for that, you got it exactly right. Of course, that means that the majority of people, 55%, still do want a reassuring human voice on the other end of the line. I'm sure that digital-led experiences will continue to grow in popularity through the future. Companies that act quickly and innovate in their delivery model to help customers navigate this new space while allowing for a human element wherever necessary will establish a strong advantage as they move forward. So now I got to share a quick joke that my daughter told me recently. What do you do if your AI catches a virus? You give it some Robitussin. It kills me. Gotta love it. So trend number 4 that happened with when COVID-19 redefined the customer experience, cost-cutting measures became paramount for businesses and consumers alike. So it's always great to save money, right? So while looking for ways to cut costs, more than 77% of Americans are trying new brands, new places to shop, or even new shopping methods. A decision primarily driven by value and convenience, according to McKinsey analysts. They want better deals. And as noted earlier, they're slashing their spending whenever possible. This makes it all the more imperative for companies to find ways to decrease their own costs as well. While some have changed their offerings and rolled out value-based products, others have turned their focus inward. As a result, business process outsourcing companies, particularly those with the technology, the processes, and the people in place to service, for example, contact center operations for them, have seen dramatic growth. So businesses are also building agile teams to adapt. Going lean does not just empower companies to save money and provide improved services. Organizations are tapping into BPO because they've found that they're better able to focus on those core operations that we were talking about so that they can tune into their customer needs as they change. If I have other companies helping me with those little things that we mentioned earlier, I can really focus on my customer. And in the changing world, how are my customers' needs changing? And how can I pivot my business strategy in line with those changes? Another item to look at is the cloud. So the cloud is just becoming the standard. Current research shows that 94% of enterprises use at least one cloud service, though many organizations leverage five or more. Overall, 83% of enterprise workloads are carried out in the cloud too. Although leveraging cloud tech isn't a new trend, having it become the standard is. And it boils down to two big reasons: continuity and cost. Events worldwide, ranging from natural disasters through political strife, have demonstrated the need for extra layers of security and continuity planning. The cloud offers both in one tidy package. Furthermore, all businesses have cost concerns, but lending approval rates have been all over the map, making it harder for companies to invest in their own tech and have faith that they will be able to keep up with bills if they take the plunge. So they're working with business process outsourcing providers now more than ever to find the right mix of cloud technology to maximize budget, security, and functionality. So, real quick, comic I like here. So, everything is in sync. All my cloud devices are in sync. If only my brain could know what's going on. How true is that, right? As we get more and more techy. So, multitasking and omni services are on the rise. As efficiency gains are skyrocketing for those who work with top notch BPO firms, more are cultivating teams with multiple skill sets to keep workflows moving. A prime example of this is seen in call centers, whereas bilingual representatives were once a rarity, resulting in bottlenecks for some and unproductivity for others. Moving to a model where all or many reps are bilingual and can take several different types of calls is much more common. At the same time, organizations are getting great results from their BPO firms and, as such, are returning to the same provider to look at what other types of solutions, what other types of services, what other types of tasks that same provider can help them with. Accountability and transparency, well, these are expected, right? With decades in the industry, DataMark has always been enthusiastic about sharing our results that we achieve with our clients, but that hasn't always been the case. It's more and more important to make sure that we're adding accountability and transparency to any BPO relationship as we go forward. So there's good news on all this. Businesses through the years have learned from the experiences that were maybe not great and maybe not transparent, maybe didn't have a whole lot of accountability, and they're now carefully examining their contracts to ensure that they have visibility so that when they work with BPO firms, they will be able to have confidence that everything will turn out how they intended it to go. So, where to outsource is a real question. Historically, outsourcing meant send it far away overseas and they'll take care of it over there. Well, that's not really what it means anymore. Yes, there are offshore options, a lot of options offshore and far shore for sure, but that's not all that there is. There's also nearshoring, particularly Mexico, if you're looking at an English Spanish need for languages that offers some balance to quality and cost and visibility that's not very far away, but you have some cost savings with it. There's also on-site outsourcing. You know, even within the United States, being able to get to have firms help you right on your own facility, and you can be close to them and see everything. That's kind of the ultimate in transparency and visibility. And then there's near site as well, which gives you kind of lets your BPO firm do their thing, but still gives you a very near comfort level. One size fits all, it's not a thing. It can't happen. We wish, right? Really, one size fits none is more accurate in the BPO space. Um, like DATAMARK, most of the BPO firms, we spend more time trying to get to know our companies that we work with. How can we serve these companies? How can we create custom solutions that really truly fit your needs? Um, I definitely highly recommend a company that is going to help you understand what your particular needs are, because yours are different from every other company that are out there. So I'm going to throw a few common myths your way. You've probably heard of these. Take note of them if you will, because I'm going to ask at the end who's really seen the most of these myths. And I'd like to hear from you on which myths have been real to you. So, myth number one, outsourcing makes you give up control. Well, no, on the contrary, you set up contracts that are really going to help your control, your visibility, your accountability, like we were talking about. It's not a matter of just let them do their own thing. It's important to get that in there. Myth number two, customer service diminishes when you outsource. Well, there's no denying that outsourcing has had some bad results in the past and some blunders, and those make the media, and there's an outcry from the people. Back in the 90s, especially the early 2000s, when people were really learning how to do all of this, that happened a lot. But modern BPO firms can really deliver the savings, but also be able to increase your customer service and make sure that you see the tangible benefits of the increased customer service while you work with them. Then we have myth three, which is that your valued employees will become jobless. Well, hopefully you now see from the initial parts of this discussion that that's not necessarily the case. BPO is not trying to make people out of work. We're actually trying to free up those employees' time to spend and focus on other things. Another well-known myth is that outsourcing takes jobs from Americans. Well, that's not the whole story. Because of that myriad of outsourcing solutions, as highlighted earlier, companies can leverage on-site, near-site. There are a lot of different ways to make sure that we're not necessarily taking jobs from Americans. That moving to offshore might be right for a certain company. It might not be, but there are lots of options. There's also something that we call, for example, compassionate outsourcing that we've done with our folks, where and taking over an on-site function, we actually hired over the same workers that were previously doing the job with the other company. We hire them onto our workforce so that they actually keep their jobs and continue with the expertise. Myth number five here, we have privacy and security risks increase when you outsource. Not necessarily true. Actually, business process outsourcing companies are often more incented and more required to make sure that they are focusing on security, that they're focusing on hazards like things that might come from email and protecting privacy in order to comply with HIPAA guidelines and finding ways to safeguard things like company intellectual properties, property. Outsourcing functions have to focus on that from the start. Another common myth is you have no recourse if your outsourcing company fails to deliver. Well, the best way to counter that myth is by looking at very diligent, very detailed contracts with your outsourcing provider to make sure that you're covering all of the different things. You can write penalties and incentives right there into the contract so that if service level agreements are not maintained and are not met, you absolutely do have recourse and actions that you can take to make sure that your partners do comply with all of your needs. Myth number 7, only large companies benefit from outsourcing. So at DataMark, we do specialize in enterprise level solutions, and our clients are multinational corporations, Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and the like. And we specifically work with larger organizations, but it's because they stand to gain the most ground. However, if you operate a mid-sized company or are on the cusp of growth, outsourcing may still be the thing that enables you to focus and free your resources up so that you can focus on that growth and move to the next level. Our last myth here, all BPO companies are the same. The reality is that every single BPO company is different and functions in its own unique way. Your experience can be dramatically different when working with one BPO firm versus the next. So we like to tailor our solutions with ours, and there are many that do that in comparison. Other BPO providers might tackle things differently. So there's a definite broad range to work with, and I encourage you to explore the different options. So moving ahead here, how your organization will benefit from outsourcing. So better goal setting, measurement and accountability. We talked about that. We're just summarizing it here together. Ability to focus on the core business, improving brand loyalty and cost efficiency by being able to focus on those processes, higher flexibility for the business continuity, the better quality performance and service that experts can provide, increased organizational efficiency, global presence and scalability, increased diversity of skills, and resource conservation even. So if your company is experiencing growth, it might be appetizing to you to be able to field that growth without having to directly hire people and expand space and equipment. With an outsourcing partner, they may be able to bear the brunt of that at a fraction of a cost to you. So one last real benefit to add on, work from home. While you may not have the means to manage a remote workforce, your friendly neighborhood business process outsourcing partner probably does. So that opens up a lot more options to you for all of the benefits that work from home can bring, like augmenting business continuity planning from just about anywhere. It helps boost agent retention when they can work from home. You can enhance more skills with a broader availability of a workforce. Enjoying higher productivity because you have happy, engaged employees. All right, so we have just a couple minutes left. I want to make sure to hit on that roadmap for you all. So I'm going to step ahead here to step 1. You have to define the goals. You need a clear picture of what exactly you're trying to accomplish if you are considering outsourcing. Do you want to cut costs? Do you want to reorganize your workforce? What's your main goal? Once you understand that, either way, you have to keep costs in mind for sure. You know, what is going to be worthwhile? What are you willing to give and take? And make estimates about what you think you will save. Be very conservative when you do that, because as you start to engage, you don't want to be disappointed. So you want to be on the conservative side as you start to look at what cost benefits can I gain from a potential outsourcing partnership. Definitely don't abdicate responsibility. So it's like we said earlier, it's not something you can just drop in and hope it takes care of itself and all will be well. It's a very engaged activity that you have to be very on top of. Keep in mind that cheap is not always best. So you've heard, I'm sure, you get what you pay for. So yes, it's sometimes there is a higher cost that comes with more expertise, that comes with more experience, that comes with better technology that a BPO company might bring. So keep that in mind and ask more questions as you are evaluating costs from different BPO firms. Consider the talent pool. Carefully research potential providers and where they have facilities so you can determine, well, what's the talent pool in all those different locations and what benefits will I get if I pick one location versus another. Decide how far you wish to outsource. So it can be close by, it can be all on the other side of the world, it can be just this piece of functionality, it can be lots of my different functions within my company. So make sure you're thinking about, how much or how little, how far you want to go with that. Have a contingency plan. So your BPO firm is going to help you have a contingency plan for your work. But think about what happens if you partner with somebody and then they have an issue. Make sure they have a good business continuity plan in place for themselves so that you don't bear the brunt of something negative. And make sure to have a quality control plan in place. And this needs to be wrapped into any contracts that you're going to build with a business process outsourcing firm. You have to determine, how am I going to measure? How am I going to make sure that what I expected to get is actually going to happen? So you have to have that whole control plan in place so you can move forward with that, including any tracking and auditing and monitoring all along the way. And for sure, get it all in writing. So it can't just be a verbal agreement on all of these points. You want to get them into a contract. And lastly, I just want to note, get expert support. That is something that we absolutely can help you with, would love to help you with. We are at the end of our time, so we don't have time for additional questions right now, but I want to just throw, my name and information out there on the screen. Please feel free to reach out. I would love to talk about these things with anybody and everybody, and would love to chat about it with you. We offer complimentary business process outsourcing consultations and would love to do that with you. So, Irais, I think we've probably reached the end.
Yes, Nina, thank you so much for all the valuable info and insights. We really appreciate it, and definitely get in touch with Nina